What's going on, guys? Zain here with Everything Vive. I want to welcome you back for another episode. I am joined by Ronnie. Ronnie, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. It's been a long week, but we're here. We're ready to talk about some VR. I'm excited.
Yeah, it has been a long week, even though we're only halfway through. But yeah, you know what? VR has been the only thing that's been keeping me sane. A lot of games that I've been playing actually every night this week so far, and even over the weekend. So lots for us to discuss. But before we do that, couple quick things. First of all, we are giving away a Steam gift card at the beginning of every month. We're actually going to start in May. So thank you to all of you guys who have submitted already. And the way that you can do that is by just supporting us on iTunes and leaving a review, letting us know how we're doing, helping the podcast grow there. And so, yeah, all you got to do, leave a review, take a screenshot of it, send it over to contact@everythingvive.com, and we will get you entered in. And like I said, I believe next week is May already, isn't it?
It's crazy, I know.
God, this year's just flying by. But yes, so next week being May, we will announce the winners in next week's episode. So make sure you guys get entered in. There are people in already. So yeah, we just want to, and it never expires. So once you're in, you know, like I said, we'll be announcing it at the beginning of every month, and it'll be a $20 Steam gift card, hopefully to get a game that we've talked about here, or maybe one that you don't already own yet. So. Well, actually, that would, of course, you wouldn't already own it. Oh, gosh. All right. It's been a long week. Let's just jump into it, shall we?
Yeah, before you say anything else.
Okay, so we're going to start off with news. And not too many like news specific items. I feel like we're going to mainly focus on a couple of, well, not specifically games, but I guess games and studios. So the first one that we'll chat about is Star Trek Bridge Crew. And this is coming out May 30th, so just a little bit over a month away. And I think what everybody's really excited about is the multiplayer aspect. And it's not just going to be the multiplayer aspect in terms of, you know, there's four different like positions that you can be one of four different positions, and you play in a co-op team environment to help kind of run, I guess the ship and everything. But what's really exciting is the fact that it's going to be cross-platform across not just HTC Vive and Oculus Rift, but PSVR.
Yep. And I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
I think, yeah, in general, Star Trek Bridge Crew has had a lot of hype built up, you know, over the last several months. A lot of people have been kind of trying it out now, it seems, in recent times. They've been showing off some demos, trying to get, you know, full crews together to be able to kind of show off what the game is all about. But really, I mean, there's just been a lot of excitement around the game. And so I think this is one of those ones that you're going to want to pick up probably close to launch, potentially. Because if everyone, I mean, it's always helpful when a game's cross-platform. Like you mentioned, I mean, this is probably one of the biggest, you know, highest profile games to launch cross-platform that we've seen, really, especially including PlayStation VR. So that's super exciting. But at the same time, you know, all these games, people kind of move from game to game to game. So it does seem like, you know, people should, you know, if you're interested in Star Trek, if you like co-op experiences where, you know, everyone kind of is serving their own role and you know, it's, you know, having to work together to solve, you know, problems and situations and whatnot, then I think you'll be best served by trying Star Trek Bridge Crew as you know, on day one, like picking it up. And obviously, you know, you can wait a couple of days just to see what people are saying about it to make sure it's worth your dollar. But everything that I've seen of people trying it out, I mean, like Zain was saying, I guess I think there's four main positions that you can be. I know two of them at least. One of them would be, you know, the captain. Actually, like there's one position, and I haven't played it. I'm not a huge Star Trek fan, so you know, please excuse me if I don't use the correct language here. But I mean, one person basically pilots the ship. Another person is in charge of, you know, weapons and whatnot, and I don't know what else, but I don't know what the other two would be necessarily, but I know at least those are two of them, and they're very different. So I mean, there's legitimate, training missions that each position has to go through in order to really be prepared to go on a mission. And then everybody kind of has an iPad like display in front of them, like you would in a futuristic ship, let's say, and they're able to toggle switches and kind of do the types of things that person in that position would have to do. And when everyone's doing what they should be together, then you're going to have a successful mission. And it just sounds like a lot of fun. And I think there were some people worried that, well, what if we don't have a full crew? Would you still be able to play? And it sounds like they've been showing off situations where it's just like two people working together rather than the full crew, and that sounds like it was working well, and just a lot of really a lot of excitement around it. So like I said, I'm not a huge Star Trek fan, but at the same time, I mean, how can you not kind of be geared in at least a little bit on the pop culture side of knowing you picture like Jean-Luc Picard and all these other popular characters from the Star Trek universe kind of helming their ships and all of that sort of thing. And so like even if you're not a Star Trek fan, you kind of have a sense of what it might be like to work together as a crew on one of these ships. So yeah, I'm excited about it, and it seems like Ubisoft is really putting a lot of emphasis towards it these next few weeks until it comes out in late May. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit, same as you. Like, I'm not the biggest Star Trek fan, although I do love the recent movies that have come out. I think the movies and the TV series, the original was a little bit before my time. But the new stuff that has come out, I definitely am a big fan of it, and where they're going with it.
Star Trek's always been one of those things for me that I think I would really like in concept. I've just never actually sat it seems very intimidating. Like you said.
Have you watched the new movies though?
I've watched the new movies and I really like the new movies.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, I mean that's the same level I'm at.
Yeah. So, so what I'm saying is though, like I've always kind of wanted to. I have a feeling that if I were to go back and that's being very generous in terms of like where would I find the time to kind of go back and watch of that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd ever go back and watch the series. Yeah. But the point I was trying to make is that whether you've watched the older series or maybe you're younger and have only seen the newer trilogy that has come out, I think that at least people will have somewhat of an idea in terms of I see how it's kind of broken down in the ship. There's the captain in one section, and then you have all these other people that you don't really know what necessarily what they're doing, but now you'll have to know to understand the different positions. But that'll all be part of the game, and I think the most important aspect of this is going to be the fact that it's going to be available. I'm sorry, the cross-platform with PSVR is going to be available because there's twice as many PSVRs out there as Vives. Yeah. At least of the last time the numbers were kind of thrown out there, and then you add on top of that all the Oculus users, and let's go back maybe 6 months or so. Maybe a little bit further back, but what was killing a lot of these multiplayer games, and it was really just the player base or the lack thereof of a player base. And because VR was such a small community at the time, and very separated in the sense that there was only you could only play with Vive players and Oculus can only play with Oculus players until games remember when Rec Room came out, I think towards the end of the year, where they were able to go cross-platform, and all of a sudden cross-platform became this really big thing because all of a sudden it's just okay, every time you log on, you don't just have to rely on people who own Vives. Now you can have Oculus users as well. And so, with a game as big as this, Ubisoft they're not an indie developer. They've been around for a while. They're going to come out with some high quality stuff. And the fact that it's going to be cross-platform, between all three of these. So basically anybody who has a VR headset, or at least this to this level of a VR headset.
Well,
That's exciting to me. So whether or not I'm into Star
yeah,
Trek or not, like that's going to be a game that I feel like is going to have a lot of hype and buzz, and a lot of people are going to be
yep,
playing it. So
yep.
I want to make sure that I'm going to be checking it out too.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the coolest parts about it, I think, is not only is it going to be multi-platform, but it's coming in as with as much hype as it is, and it's going to be multi-platform from day one. And I think that's key because I mean, at this point, we do have some multi-plat. I'm trying to think off the top of my head whether I'm not sure if whether a lot of our big titles on the PC side of things have really made their way over to PlayStation VR cross-platform as well. Like I'm sure there are some. Like it sounds like there's some other Ubisoft games, for example, that are like that do offer that, but they're not the same type of hugely hyped. And I don't think that they released day one on with cross platform support. And so I think that's really like you look at like an Eve Valkyrie, for example. It came out on Oculus. People really enjoyed it, but the player count wasn't really quite there. And eventually, it came out on the Vive, and I would have to imagine it did pretty well. But can you imagine how well it would have been if it was on both platforms day one? Day one,
Yeah.
people would have been hyped and would have all been, and you would have had that large player base. I mean, and that's even talking about the early days of these headsets. We're talking much larger install bases now, but just the idea that I would say in those first 2, 3, 4 weeks, people really get into a new game that's just like everyone's talking about it on Reddit, everybody's excited about it, everybody wants to play. That's really the time when people are really going to get hooked on something. And if you spread it out and offer it on one platform and then 3 or 4 months later release it on another platform and eventually add in cross-platform support and all that, like by the time you do all of that, I feel like some of that hype and excitement and newness of the experience has died away, and you don't get that full. So I'm just really curious to see, if Star Trek Bridge Crew is as good as I think a lot of people are hoping it's going to be. If it lives up to that, I'm kind of curious to see, exactly how many people are going to be in there playing, and how easy it'll be to assemble full crews and all that kind of stuff. It'll be exciting, So
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, that's actually the point that I was going to make next, which you just covered on. It's going to be fresh for everyone at the same exact time. And I think this is going to be the first time, at least, that there's like a major release like this that people are really anticipating and looking forward to. So, I mean, I'm part of the group, man. I'm part of the people who are excited and ready to see this game. May 30th is going to be here, sooner rather than later. So I haven't had a chance to check out any of the videos yet. And I kind of go back and forth because like I love checking out, gameplay videos, and I know that we post a lot, but at the same time, like sometimes there's that element of surprise when you first go into a game. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so
No,
it's
I
that
think
balance.
especially some of the games that I think we're going to talk about today. Like I haven't played your game, obviously, but like I know the game I played that I'm going to be talking about. Yeah, it's one of those ones where I think most of the best aspects of it you get from experiencing fresh for the first time. And so I'm kind of with you on that in terms of, especially when some of these experiences aren't super long, it's sometimes nice to kind of keep it as a surprise until you experience it firsthand.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, we'll keep reporting on it if there's any other updates, but that's that for Star Trek Bridge Crew. We got one other news item. I don't know if you want to take the lead on this. I think, well, you're probably better suited to take the lead on it because.
That's fine.
But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So Cliff Blezinski, I think a lot of people out there listening will know who he is. Some probably won't, but they'll probably be familiar with a lot of the games that he was involved with over the years. Cliff Blezinski started his game development career, as far as I know, at Epic. I think he was one of the. I don't know if he was one of the co-founders, but he was definitely one of the earliest members of Epic back in the Jazz Jackrabbit days and Like, I mean, we're talking, PC games back in the early '90s, probably. But he was with the company, worked on Unreal. Then he was kind of the face, behind Gears of War. That whole franchise, a lot of it, even though obviously there were tons and tons of people working on it, he was kind of the media face that a lot of people would see in connection with Gears of War. And kind of after having his huge success and all of that as a designer there, he kind of stepped away and left Epic Games. And it was around the time, I think, that they had sold a big portion of their company. I think it's Tencent is the name of the company that they had sold part of it to. But there was just, some stuff going on, and he decided to take a break. And eventually he founded his own new studio called Boss Key Games. And as far as I know, I think they've only released one major product. I'm not 100% sure. It was a game kind of similar in some ways to Unreal, as far as, my understanding is it's kind of like it's an online competitive shooter that's kind of arena based and that sort of thing. Could be wrong, whatever. The point is kind of giving you some of his backstory, and then to let everybody know, to get excited, that Cliff Blezinski at a talk recently mentioned that they're basically in the stages of trying to get investment funding for a full VR game. And so at this point, I mean, he didn't mention the platforms that he would be working. I would assume it would be all major PC platforms at the very least. Not a whole lot of details were given about exactly what type of game it's going to be. He did allude to the fact that this isn't going to be a short, kind of tech demo-y type of experience, that they're really wanting to develop a full-fledged VR game with all the bells and whistles. He focused a little bit on the fact that he thinks, Unreal Engine 4 would be the way that they'd want to go, and not just because he had worked at Epic previously, but because really, all of those little things that graphically make you feel like you're really there, that the Unreal Engine 4 can provide kind of above and beyond on. And so he talked a little bit about some of that, and just more or less said, hey, trying to get funding on this, and kind of talked in general about, I think, probably some issues he has with people kind of having poor experiences with other VR titles, getting sick and those types of things. I mean, some of it made me wonder if he's tried some of the amazing stuff out there on the Vive, just because.
I mean, he has to have, right? There's like no way that he hasn't.
No, exactly. So no, but I'm just saying that to say that I personally think that there's quite a bit out there that does a great job at keeping. But if obviously a developer of his stature is saying that, hey, I think we could do better, then I'd love to see that product come to market. So any way you look at it, any way you shake it, I think it's exciting to have a guy like Cliff Blezinski work on a VR project. And yeah, so we'll kind of wait to see and report on further developments as they come out. But it is definitely worth mentioning because he is such a big name, and he's been behind a lot of big products in the past that have been very influential in both console and PC gaming. So
now, my only question about this, I mean, okay, so it is exciting, but even though it's still relatively hypothetical.
Of course. Yeah, I agree.
But at the same time, let's just say he's already got an idea on mind and whatever. Like, at least from what I've heard, it seems like it takes a lot of these, quote unquote, full games on consoles a couple of years to develop. So, I can only assume that VR would take roughly the same amount of time frame, if not more. So, I mean, like I said, it's cool that, there's awesome people like him working on stuff like this, but at the same time, I guess it's just more so of the long play with this. It's not something we're necessarily going to see in the next 6 to 12 months.
No, you're right. That's a good point. So
So like I said, I mean, it's still really cool to see more and more people getting into the VR space because I mean that's exactly what you want, right? I mean, this guy was a legend at Epic Games. And sorry, it was a legend at Epics, and it's so
yeah.
you know what I mean. Sorry, I lost my train of thought, but my point being that we just want to see more and more people, especially the people who have such clout in the gaming industry, getting into VR gaming, not necessarily gaming, but just into VR and AR in general.
Yeah, no, I agreed, and point well said. I mean, a lot of this stuff is kind of a wait and see kind of long haul game, and really, I mean, there's so much out there of kind of hyperbole and high talk about what these types of experiences may be sometime in the future or whatever. I mean, at the very least, we know that we have a lot of great stuff now as well. So,
Gotcha. All right. Well, that's all I really had for news. I don't know about you. Do you have anything else?
yeah, no, I think there's been a lot of pretty decently high profile releases lately, and I mean today we have a couple to talk about. I feel like I'm just backlogged in terms of the types of the games that I have on my list to play right now. So
I feel the same way. I mean, it's again, we're complaining about good problems, but I feel like every time I go in, there's always something new to try.
yeah,
And it's just
and
like,
I think the experiences are getting more involved as well. Like I feel like it was a little bit easier before to be able to kind of just put in an hour or two and feel like you had a good grasp on something. Whereas we're seeing more and more titles now that I feel like deserve more and more of your time in order to really get good impressions. So
nope, I agree. Well, let's jump into game talk then. Let's flip a coin. You want to go first or second?
I'll go first. Actually,
Okay, go ahead.
I usually go second. I think so. This time I'll go first, just to because I'm trying to. This game is actually kind of a hard one for me to talk about because I've been wanting to play this game for quite a while, and I felt like my impressions were kind of a little bit all over the place. So,
Well, let's start from the beginning. I mean, okay, so the game that we're going to talk about for you is Batman, the Arkham VR
yep,
game.
yep.
I mean, I want to get like from the ground up. What were your expectations? What were your impressions? And did they meet
Yeah.
somewhere? What was it good? I don't know. Just
Yeah, no. So it's actually really interesting. So I guess so. I mean, as a lot of our listeners will probably already know, um, Batman Arkham VR was one of the launch titles for the PlayStation VR when it came out. In late 2016. So I think PlayStation VR came out in October of 2016, and Batman VR Arkham VR was a launch title. And I was really jealous of people that had PlayStation VR setups at the time because there were a few titles here and there. While we had gotten to enjoy, our high end HTC Vive kit for quite a while already. There were a few titles here and there that I was like, man, why won't they just release those on the PC? You had titles like Batman. You had titles like Rez that I still haven't really had a chance to play yet, and just a couple of games here and there that sounded really cool, but we didn't have access to. So when I heard that Batman Arkham VR was coming to the HTC Vive, I was really excited, and that isn't to say. I mean, I had already gotten impressions from people about what they thought Batman was like on the PlayStation VR. So my expectations going into playing it for the Vive were a bit tempered compared to early on. But I still think I had pretty high expectations, to be honest, because there's something about having, an experience, like a franchise experience with a character and a world and an atmosphere that you really know that is super exciting to me. And I mean, we play in a lot of these generic, kind of environments with different games that don't necessarily always have the ability to link themselves to huge franchises like Batman. And so there's just something inherently cool about feeling like this is an authentic experience that, you're going to actually be in the shoes of this character and be in this world. And it's not something that you get to do every time you jump into a VR game. So I mean, I was familiar with the Arkham games. I played most of those on PC, and I really enjoyed them. And I thought, especially when I played the earlier titles, that they were graphically amazing, and I really liked what they did with the various characters, all of the great Batman villains, and so I was just interested to see all of that in VR. So now on to, I guess, my experiences, and I'm not going to spoil Batman Arkham VR for listeners. So if you're listening and you're kind of worried about whether or not you should continue to listen, I'm going to do my best to stay away from anything that would kind of ruin your experience in any way or kind of tell you narratively what's going to happen. Because there are a few things in this game that are kind of spoiler worthy. So I'm not really gonna. I'm gonna try my best to stay away from those. But yeah, so I guess my first just general thoughts on being in the game is that you could really tell that it was made for a system that wasn't as robust, a VR system that it wasn't as robust as the Vive. And I say that because in general, I always get kind of disappointed with games that don't allow you to fully explore environments, and games that kind of punish you for trying to walk outside of the boundaries that they set for you. And I know that there's gameplay reasons for why sometimes, developers would be forced to kind of limit people from walking through walls and that sort of thing. But still, it's a very game-breaking thing for me personally to feel like I'm kind of stuck in a little square, a little bubble. And early on, the game was kind of giving me some vibes like that. Like anytime I tried to kind of walk around within the play area, it would fade to black if I got too close to an object and say that I needed to step back, or just in general.
Well, I have a quick question about that before you go on, though, because I know that this originally came out for PSVR, which isn't really set up for room scale. So how did that translate over to the Vive, which obviously is
that's what I'm
superior
guessing.
for room scale? Were you able to turn around or?
Yeah, you can turn around. So that stuff. I mean, I still think ultimately, especially going from messing around with games in the Oculus to playing with the Vive, I don't think there's any comparison really. I mean, any game, even games that are designed mostly just for forward-facing experiences, I still think are better with better. They're much more fluid and easy to play, I think, with a full room scale setup, just because you don't have to worry about turning around. Like I think my experience has been with games that don't really do a good job of supporting room scale. The main benefit you get is being able to go turn around in full 360 and not have to worry about losing tracking or your screen going black or whatnot. So that's one advantage. So like in Batman, you can totally turn around completely and it's fine. It won't lose tracking. You can walk around a little tiny bit, but it's just you can tell the environments were created in a way to where they were very small and narrow, so that there just isn't a whole lot of room for you to actually move in general. And then anytime you get near an object, it kind of artificially, like they'll put, cages or grates or something that's kind of close to your periphery that kind of locks you off a bit. And if you kind of move your head through those bars to kind of get a better view of something, rather than kind of letting you get away with it a little bit, they instead just start fading to black and it basically ruins it forces you to basically stay put. So again, I mean, I guess to some extent that makes it a little bit more like they want you to stick in one place, but on the other side, it just felt very claustrophobic, and I never felt like the one thing that I can say that really disappointed me is that while there are definitely times where I felt like I was Batman, most of those times were actually where I could see myself as Batman. Like they'll show you mirrors and you can kind of, like move your arms and stuff and look around and see yourself as Batman. And those were cool. But I think because of how much they limit the amount of movements you're able to do, I didn't feel very empowered. Like Batman is a very quick kind of, he's a very quick moving, agile, ninja like figure, right? So
Yeah,
it
well,
feels
I mean,
weird.
this might be spoilerish, so feel free not to respond directly to it. But I mean, were there any combat situations that you were in?
Not really. Like everything is very. I mean, they do give you, and I don't think this is spoilery, at least as far as I'm concerned. I mean, they give you like a couple, like you have a couple of gadgets. I won't get into too much on what they are. I mean, one's I guess why not? One's a scanner, and one's basically your batarang, and then then you have the what's it called? Oh come on, I know it's basically the gun that shoots out the grappling hook.
Oh
So
yeah,
it's a
okay.
grappling gun or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
You have that, but like even the vague concept of having a grappling gun, you would think like, oh, that'll be great. You could grab all sorts of objects and bring them to you, and you can move around environments using the grappling gun. You can't do any of those things really. Like there isn't a lot of interactivity in this title in general. So there's a lot of situations where I felt like I wanted to interact with something or I wanted to, and there just wasn't anything there to do. And so I don't know if it was them just not having a lot of time to implement systems or if they legitimately were worried that they would make people sick or like it seems like they really shied away from any type of really strong movements or even real teleportations. Like there's certain situations where you're able to move around in environments in a very limited fashion. And in those situations, there's usually like 3 or 4 spots in a room that you can teleport to, and that's it. So they're fixed locations, and you can move there. And when you move there, it doesn't even feel like you're like and to some extent, I feel like this game just didn't really get a chance to learn lessons from a lot of the other games that have came out on the Vive and in other VR systems since, like Raw Data, for example, has a great movement, teleportation system.
Well, I mean, keep in mind that it wasn't really originally designed for the Vive, and I
No.
wonder if
But
there
like-
was not much. Maybe they didn't want to change as much when the exclusivity finally ran out, and it was more so like, okay, well, let's just take the gameplay and adjust it so that
for
Vive
sure.
controls can be used.
For sure. Don't get me wrong. Like, for sure, this is a port of the PlayStation VR game. Like, I have no qualms about that. But I mean, if these are the types of limitations that people with PlayStation VR, setups have to deal with due to the hardware, then that's a very sad state of affairs, I think. Because, and I'm not trying to be a complete downer, because actually there are some things like early on, I'm giving these negative kind of impressions of the things.
I was just gonna say, man, you sound so down giving this review. It sounds like it was really disappointing for you.
It was in some ways. In some ways, it was the opposite. So that's what. So like, if I could, because I don't want to go on and on and on. Like, there's so many like specific things I think that I could point to and say, man, like that sucks or that's disappointing. I mean, I'd say the biggest takeaway is that some of the things that you would be most excited to do in VR as Batman are not in this game, like most of them. And I heard people talk about, oh, but you get the detective side of Batman in the game, and that's really cool. And that's like, I didn't even really super feel like I was truly getting, like, there were a couple of moments where I felt like that, but in general, I felt like the VR mechanics in this game were rather weak. Most of the time, they were very kind of kitschy and just, oh, like in VR, you can push a button with your hand. So let me push this button with my hand. Or let me, like, it was just very, like, kind of elementary in terms of, and nothing had real real depth to it. There's not a whole lot of like the world as gorgeous as it is in that game. Like it looks great. It just doesn't. It didn't like I didn't feel like I had a big impact on the world. I couldn't interact with really any object. Like it was very very limited in terms of you can interact with this one thing, and there could be 10 things in the room that look exactly like it, but I can't touch those other things. I can just touch this one thing, and like it's that kind of stuff just kind of bummed me out. But and the other thing I should mention, because I did want to bring this up, was that you know I was really excited to see kind of a AAA graphical type of experience in VR. There are some of those types of games, but really, like this is a console or PC level title that had a lot of polish, high quality models, great animation, all that. I wanted to see what that would be like in VR, and I'd say it mostly lived up to my expectations on that front. I mean, the character models are great. Like I said, the animations are kind of a step above what most titles you would find on Steam right now for the Vive. But then it doesn't look quite as good or as real as you remember it in the game, like playing just the game with a controller on a flat TV. Like I think there's something about being in it and seeing it in scale and close up that kind of, brings out kind of the worst qualities about some of that type of art. So like things just look a little bit faker, I think, when they're blown up and when you can see them more clearly. So like some of the things like the Batmobile or those things looked cool, but they didn't look quite as real in VR as I would have wanted them to. So that was kind of some bummer stuff, whatever. But then they actually did a really interesting job with the story, and I thought some of the stuff near the end of I'm not going to spoil these things, but yeah, surprisingly, it was kind of there were some twists and turns, and it was the narrative that actually kind of pulled it away for me at the end. And so, like
pulled it away, meaning it got
like in
you,
a good way.
Okay.
It got. Yeah, no, not pulled me away, like out of the experience. Actually, quite the opposite. Like it pulled me into the experience and really, left me with a positive impression. Like at the end of the day, I felt like it was definitely like I enjoyed my time with the game. So like the first third of the game or so, and this isn't a very long game. I mean, you can probably finish it in a couple of hours, honestly. At least the main portions of it. There are some things that you're able to do kind of after the fact that add some replay value to it. But in general, there's not a whole lot as far as like length here. But yeah, the narrative is really strong. And I do think they use VR like in a clever way near the end, and several clever ways near the end that kind of make it much more impactful than it would have been if it was just like a 2D. Like most of the stuff would be a lot less effective if you were just playing a normal game versus VR. So that said, like by the end, it kind of made up for it. And ultimately, I actually think, I mean, if you're really into Batman and you're excited about this game, like if you're someone that's kind of like me, I mean, I'm not the hugest Batman fan, but I'm a decent Batman fan. I love comics in general, and I really like the Arkham games, and I've really waited for some of these bigger franchises to come to virtual reality, and I haven't gotten a chance to experience them on other platforms. And so for that reason, I mean, I picked up the game for $20, and while a couple of hours of gameplay is probably not an amazing value for $20, I do think that there's some genuinely cool moments in this, and I think you'll really enjoy it if you like Batman. Like if you've played a ton of Vive games, there's going to be moments in this game that are kind of frustrating for you. I still felt like even the way that they kind of place your fists on the Vive controllers, like you know how in different games your controllers become different objects, whatever.
Yep.
it felt a little off to me how they had the Vive controllers be Batman's hands. It's just like I said, it seemed like maybe it would work a little bit better with an Oculus Touch controller. I'm not sure, but it just felt like it was just a little off. And
I mean, have you played other games where you have hands in the Vive
Yeah,
ones? I don't feel like that's ever been an issue for me.
No, it hasn't. It hasn't really been much of an issue. Like when I think of raw data and other games where it's kind of similar, I feel like those games kind of handle it a little bit better. Like I'm just saying that there's little things here and there that you can kind of tell. Okay, like this wasn't designed for the Vive, and this is someone doing the best that they can to kind of graft it onto the Vive, so to speak. So there's some moments like that. And in general, there's a lot of individual systems in this game that are kind of like systems from other VR games you may have played. And some of those VR games are going to have better mechanics. They're going to do that stuff better. And I still think that there's room for a true Batman VR game. Like, I think if you were to incorporate like movement from a game like Sirento, for example, and I mean, all the movement, really Sirento, I think it's a lot of that stuff right. With the narrative aspects of this game and the presentation and, little bits of different things here and there from other titles, I think you could have something amazing. Like, I think Batman in VR is an amazing concept that would be super fun. I just don't think that this game really fully goes where it needs to. But like I said, but that said, if you are at all interested in playing it and you go into it just knowing that this is going to be more of kind of a short narrative experience, and that's what you're going to get out of it more so than just having fun with the gameplay mechanics, then I don't think you're going to be too disappointed. So that's kind of my I'm trying my best to temper, I think, people's expectations, but I don't want that to be overly burdensome on the fact that, like, at the end of the day, I finished it and I said, "Oh, okay, that was, it was kind of a bummer at first, but it found its way, and ultimately, I enjoyed my experience." So this might be one if you're hugely interested in Batman. It might be something you just pick up. Just know that, it's not going to be mind-blowing as far as the mechanics go. Or if you're pretty interested and those things seem like a deterrent to you, put it on your wish list and wait till it goes on sale. I'm sure, just like all the other Arkham games and, tons of games that are, released by these bigger publishers, they go on sale, at least in my experience, it seems, more often than some of the smaller indie games. So just keep an eye open for it, and if you ever see it on a really good sale, pick it up, and I think you'll have a good time.
Cool. Well, now that you've given a full, thorough review, let's get a nice superficial number. Let's just say something out of 10. Where would you rate it for your experience?
Something out of 10. That's my gut told me, and I'll admit that
go
if
with
I
your
were
gut.
to be I'll admit that I'm kind of a little bit harsh. I feel like, because I want to say it's a 7, probably around a 7. Okay,
well, 7 isn't as harsh as I thought.
No, because I think it's like, I think it's between a 6 and a 7, like maybe between a 6.5 and a 7.5, somewhere around there. Because there's moments where I think it's super great, and then there's moments that are kind of really disappointing. So I think in that range is probably, if I had to assign a number, what I would give it.
Gotcha. So I'll be honest. I don't want to say a long time ago, but when the game first came out for PSVR, I actually watched a gameplay video of it, and I'm pretty sure I watched all the way through to the end. I can't remember at this point, but the ending does sound like, I remember you mentioned there's some narrative stuff that happens at the end, which is kind of ringing a bell now. But I completely understand where you're coming from. Of course, not being in the game, is completely different than watching it on a screen. But
Yeah.
I get what you're saying in terms of, you don't feel like Batman, especially not the action-packed Batman that we've been seeing in pop culture recently. Obviously Batman is supposed to be the world's greatest detective, from a comic book sense, and I feel like you really do get to explore that in this game. But in terms of having, like what you're saying, the overall Batman feel, I can definitely see where you're coming from. Just because looking at the gameplay, I know I'd asked you questions earlier, but I'm really trying to think back now to what I remember seeing, and it just makes sense that there's room for so much more. So I just want to kind of second that fact, or not that fact, that comment that you made, and that, hopefully there'll be a full-length Batman game that comes out at some point that really does take advantage of room scale the way that it should be, especially for the Vive.
Yeah, no, I really hope that. And yeah, not to say, there's some glimmers here and there of if you, like I said, if you were to take some of the things that have been done really well in VR since this game came out, all of these great movement systems, and just really be less afraid to kind of show, I think anything involving movement and action, they were just scared of. And I don't know if they tried it and it just ended up making people sick, and then they decided to take it out. Who knows? But it just really seemed like this was the most conservative, kind of shy way that you could approach the character in VR. And I really hope that we see more Batman and more superhero, just in general, experiences that are actually officially supported come to the Vive and other platforms that take advantage of all of these innovations that you see in these other titles. Because there's so many. There's a lot of great indie developers that are doing some amazing things with all these systems, that if you were to kind of combine them together and slap, these kind of stories and characters and atmospheres, together, that, they would just be incredible. It would be so much fun. So I hope we...
Thinking back to Richie's Plank experience, that fire deck level.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
that mechanic, they just did something fantastic. Everybody that I show that is just like, oh my God, I feel like Superman or Iron Man or something. So, I mean, there's so much potential for, a lot of the superhero genre. So I can't wait for the franchises to really take advantage of it, like you're saying.
Yep.
Cool. Well, let's jump into game number 2, which will be my game. And this is another, I guess, high-profile title that came out. People were really excited about it, and that is Rick and Morty, virtual Rick-ality. And excuse me, but so I don't know where to start with this. It's fun. It's a good game, and I think even if you're not a Rick and Morty fan, there is a lot of value to it. And okay, so the quick comparison is going to be to Job Simulator, made by the same people, and it's kind of opposite of what you mentioned with Batman in terms of how you interact with the environment. And here you can interact with pretty much everything, and the environment kind of remains the same, or not the same, but it's just like it reacts to you, and just nothing respawns, nothing disappears. Like I was playing the game, and by the end of the game, there was just a mess on the floor everywhere. 'Cause every time I didn't need something, I would just discard it, and all of a sudden, I just had this huge mess that I would have to clean up later. But the free-flowing nature of the game is one of its obvious strengths. The storyline aspect is probably up in the air. I would say that it's definitely a positive, and I'm talking about that specifically from just being neutral about it. You really have to, if you enjoy Rick and Morty humor, you're gonna love the game. I think that's just that. At least that's my take on it. I love the show. I'm a big fan of it, and so something about being in the house, being in the garage where the show takes place. There's almost that surreal aspect to it, and then obviously seeing the characters, kind of live and in your face speaking to you was also another really cool effect. But if the humor is not what you're looking for, if the I mean, it's gonna be weird. There's gonna be a lot of like random things that happen or need to happen. And again, like I said, you don't necessarily need to be a fan of the show in order to appreciate it, because I think it's at the end of the day, a lot of it is really just like puzzle solving. You go through the game and it's not necessarily like escape the room, but it's a lot of puzzle solving that you just kind of figure out throughout the entire game, really. And then obviously you're being guided by the main characters, but on the whole, that's generally what it is. And the humor and the customization, I guess, is the best word that I can come up with, because you can literally do whatever you want. And I know a lot of that was born out of what made Job Simulator so popular when it came out with the Vive. So yeah, those I would say are the main positives. Another one that I actually want to mention, which I'm not going to take credit for, I believe I saw somebody comment about it in or on Reddit, and so it's not my comment, but I will definitely second it and expound on it a little bit more. And that is the teleportation system that was used. So for example, like the first part or first level of the game that you play is in the garage. And so the garage is kind of divided up into 4 different quadrants. And instead of being able to teleport anywhere that you want, what you end up doing is teleport from quadrant to quadrant. And then that makes full use of your room scale. And so let's say you're standing at the edge of one quadrant and you teleport to the other quadrant, you're going to be in the same corresponding edge of that quadrant as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
it's basically like moving, like kind of like in the lab, moving your square from one place to another. But here it's
no. Because the thing is, in the lab, you can really move wherever you want.
Yeah, because you can kind of set where you want. You basically generate your own quadrant.
Exactly. So here the quadrants are predefined, and
fixed.
You can just go from one to the other. But the thing is, like, to me, I don't know, but it made a good use of room scale in that sense, because I would teleport to a different quadrant, and then I have to walk over to the other side. I can't just teleport everywhere.
That makes sense.
So there's actually a lot of walking involved. There are a lot of cool, unique. I don't want to give away too many things from the game.
I have a question, because this is stepping away a little bit from the actual like mechanics of the game.
Yeah, go ahead.
And just in general, because I'm not like it's not that I'm not a Rick and Morty fan. I never watched. I don't have cable. I've never really watched a show before, right? And actually, one of my first my understanding is the same people behind Rick and Morty were the people behind accounting, correct?
Correct, yeah.
All right, so I didn't really have much experience with their stuff or their type of humor, and I know this is going to be mixed because I've heard some people not like accounting, not like some of those games, because they just didn't get it. They didn't think it was funny. They thought it was kind of weird and off-putting or whatever. I thought accounting was great. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So I thought it was really funny, and I just thought the weird quirkiness of it like made it that much more like, I don't know. I wouldn't say compelling, but more unique and endearing in a way. And so like I'm kind of curious, like comparing this game, which is the more, traditional Rick and Morty kind of labeled experience, versus accounting, which is kind of something that they just, I guess, came up with. I don't know. What feels more like Rick and Morty? Like, who are the creators again?
Justin Roiland and Dan Harmon.
Okay, so yeah, so where does this game? How does it feel like Rick and Morty? Is it just the characters, or is it like does it feel like it gets it right? Kind of like accounting. Like, to me, accounting felt very stylized, very like I could tell this must be like their product, because it just felt so much like someone's personal touch,
Yeah. So accounting, Well, okay, if I'm going to compare them directly to one another, accounting is definitely more random, just because I feel like there wasn't necessarily like a storyline or anything behind it. Yeah, they had something there, but it was not related to the show at all.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that also allowed them just do whatever the hell that they wanted, really. Like, I'm not going to ruin accounting, but you kind of go through the different levels of VR and VR within VR type of thing.
Yeah.
And so, each level could be unique and weird and different. And, the humor there was still very much, Rick and Morty-ish, because the voices done were the same, people or a person who does the voices on the show.
Gotcha.
So in that way, it had that feel, it had that aura, it had that vibe, but it wasn't really like Rick and Morty. It just had that feel to it, and you could definitely tell that it was made by the same people, from the voice, but then also just from like the humor and some of the vulgarity of the humor as well.
Yeah.
With Rick and Morty, I mean, the thing is, like, you start the game off in the house, and then you go to the garage, and the garage is actually one of the main focal points from the show, because that's Rick's like office where he does all of his cool crazy sci-fi stuff. So now you get to do a lot of the things in his garage, play with a lot of his tools, his toys, interact with characters from the show. So by default, it's already going to be more Rick and Morty-ish in that way.
But does it feel at all like one of my concerns would be like, I'm trying to remember their name, but the developers behind Job Simulator,
Alchemy Labs, right?
Yeah, Alchemy Labs. There you go. Part of my not all developers get the feel of a franchise that they're creating a game for. Like every other, like sometimes they nail it, sometimes they kind of get it, sometimes they get the superficial things, but it doesn't. Like, how much do you think that they nailed Rick and Morty with this, and how much? Like, what were your thoughts on that?
I would say that they did a pretty good job. I'm not gonna. Now you're making me overthink it, because now I'm like, oh well, maybe they could have done this, and that. But I would say that I feel like they did a pretty good job. The thing is, what made accounting so great was also just its total randomness. Now the fact that you're asking me this question it's interesting, because my mind is kind of turning and churning exactly how I feel about the game. And it's got the randomness of Rick and Morty, but it also is a little bit more mundane, because the thing is, like, it has to stay within the bounds and the limits of the show. And so even though the show can be totally random, and a lot of the things that you do in the game mimic the show, on the whole, you're still doing a lot of, I guess, more like mundane things that are, more like puzzle solving, escape the room type of gameplay mechanics. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah, I do.
So in that way, accounting is definitely more out there, and I'm not going to say that I like accounting better than this, but for a free experience, I think everybody should play accounting. Just make sure you don't do it with the kids around, but or whatever. If your kids can handle it, but who am I to tell you how to be a parent? It's not my place, so I'll just shut up. But where was I? So the thing is, like, with this game, I feel like it does capture a really good sense of what the show is. And really, it's just being able to play with a lot of the toys from the show, seeing all of the Easter eggs in there, interacting with a lot of the characters. And I'm not talking about, main characters. I'm talking about like a lot of the side characters that appeared in like only one episode, but like, they're memorable. They left an impression, and all of a sudden,
fun.
Yeah.
That's fun.
And the thing is, like, you have to work with some of these characters, or use some of these characters, or fight some of these characters. And so it's really, like I said, it was just a lot of fun to go through. And I'm really trying to look at it through the lens of somebody who's not a fan of the show. And I would still make the argument that the game is fun and unique enough where you can play it, just because, like, all of a sudden now you have to, if you're not familiar with the game, if you're not familiar with the show, then this stuff probably seems even way more random. So maybe it does have the accounting vibe to you and the accounting feel, even though you're doing like mundane stuff. All of a sudden you're like, having to charge batteries and do like weird actions just to like get certain results. But for me, it's just like, okay, I'm watching, or playing the game, and it mimics the show in a really good way.
Interesting.
So,
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm interested to check it out to see what I think now, because I don't have the Rick and Morty background, so it's almost sounding like maybe it'll be more fresh to me.
I actually, it might. I mean, well, you could potentially catch up with the entire show before you try it out, but I would say definitely give it a shot and see what you think. Like I said, it's hard to look at it, through a neutral lens and not somebody who enjoys the show. I said, I think if you're a fan of the show, you're gonna have a great time with it regardless. And just to touch on one of the negatives, and I'm not even gonna post this as my own personal negative, but I do want to address it because I know it's come up in a lot of Reddit forums and Steam reviews and things like that. But the gameplay, if you just run through the main game and the storyline, I think you can get it done in about like an hour and a half or so. Was like the average time, which is, an hour and a half to 2 hours is just enough time you need to play the game and return it to Steam and be a total jerk about, about doing that. But there was a post in response to a lot of the negative bashing of this game and not having enough gameplay to warrant the price tag. And so again, like on the show, I hate to talk about what price is.
I'm sure people,
because people value things differently.
Batman too. So yeah.
So,
but it's worth bringing up.
But yeah, so I mean, it's $29.99 or $30 US for an hour and a half of gameplay. And this is if you just do the storyline. The thing is, like, I'm sure just like Job Simulator, which I actually didn't play, I watched gameplay videos of, but I definitely was able to get the vibe of that from the videos.
Yeah.
But what was I saying? It's got that sense of it with just an hour and a half. But the thing is, you can get lost in the game just kind of messing around with different things. And there's a lot of different, Easter eggs, but also just like, they're not really side missions, but other things that you can do and redo, and like little mini games or games within the game that you can play and get different results every single time. And I mean, a lot of that is gonna have to do with just the mythos of the show. So without giving anything away, for anybody who's watched the show and remembers the episode with the little video game Roy, they have a version of that in here, so you can actually just keep on playing that and like live the different lives of so many different characters within the game, and that's just like a video game within this game. But that's just like a little mini teaser. But yeah, I mean, I would say, so getting back to the post that I read on Reddit, there was a guy who mentioned, let's say you go out to a movie, right? Let's say you take your significant other out to a movie and you buy popcorn. That's probably going to come out to about $30 for 2 hours of entertainment at max.
Yep.
And that kind of opened my eyes a little bit. Not that like I was very much against like gameplay time relative to how I should value a product or a game, but it was more so like, oh, okay, like this puts like a quantifiable amount of entertainment time to entertainment value dollars. You know what I mean? So it's just like, okay, that makes sense to me. I can totally buy into that, because to go out for a night or to have fun, whatever, it's just like, yeah, you could easily spend $20-$30, but here we are kind of complaining about buying a game that would probably entertain us for more than just the night that we're buying it, or more than just the day that we're buying it, if we really allow ourselves to dig deep into all of the features that it has. You know what I mean? I do. Yeah, so that just got me thinking differently, not just about Rick and Morty, but about a lot of these games where people are complaining about shorter shorter play times. And of course, like everything's going to be on a case by case basis. It's not, I would say with something like Rick and Morty, it's easy to say that the replay value is high because of all the little mini games and Easter eggs you can go through and hunt down. Other games probably aren't going to be like that, but I would say this game falls into the category of yes, or, something that would.
Very cool.
But yeah, I mean, so that's just my thought on it, or just kind of sharing the Reddit post that was on there. But I mean, what do you think? Like, has that ever like deterred you, or like, have you ever felt that you wanted to return a game because the gameplay wasn't long enough?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, it's usually more as far as like if I don't fall in love with the game like I thought I would. So like the games I'm usually most torn about returning or not are games where I think they're well made, but they're not for me. And kind of what, should I, if I'm not really getting into it, should I just return it, or should I give it more of a chance and try to spend more time to get into it more? You know what I mean? Like sometimes those are sometimes kind of my dilemma. Like most of the time for me, if I'm purchasing a game, if I liked it, but it was short, I personally like to, support developers and support. Like I hope that, okay, I supported this title. Maybe this game was too short, but by paying for it, I'm going to encourage them to make more titles like this, and possibly like other people out there to make titles like this as well. So that's kind of how I try to think of it. And yeah, I don't know. Usually it's the games where like I'm literally just not touching them, that I'm like, okay, if I'm not going to be playing a game, I'm not sure why I bought it in the first place. Those are usually the ones that I end up trying to return if I, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I got you. I was just curious where your thought process was.
Yeah,
I'm sure everybody's different, and like, I get it. I understand. It's these games cost money. Well, obviously they cost money to make, but they cost money to buy. And if you don't feel like you're getting your value's worth, then I'm totally supportive of the fact that you should be able to return it. And obviously Steam is too, just with how
no, they have their policy.
Yeah,
like,
how their policy is set up.
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
I just at the same time, like I also back what you're saying in the sense that, like, with VR being so young right now, you kind of like show your support, you put your money where your mouth is, type of thing.
Yeah, and again, like there is something to be said about, oh well, I want games to be longer, so I shouldn't support short games. Yeah, I guess there is something to that, but in general, if I see something in a title that I like and that I want to support, I would prefer to support those developers, buy their games, and then and then give productive criticism. Leave a review and say, hey, I love this game, but I wish it was longer, or this or that, or say what you need to say. But at the same time, appreciate what people are making for you, because there's so many titles out there that I'm sure developers aren't really making back, the amount of time and money spent on them, but are really amazing experiences that are really pushing the platform forward. So I think it's important to try to do what you can. So
yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I'm sure there's a bunch of indie titles out there that, whenever if they come out at a bad time, or they just don't get the recognition that they deserve, I mean, a lot of time, energy, sweat, equity went into making them, and sometimes it's just not paid back. So it's always good to be able to support if it makes sense.
Yep. So
cool, man. Well, that's all I had for Rick and Morty. I think I touched on all the points that I had, but you got anything else?
No, I think that's it. So I think, there's a lot of cool stuff in the world. There's a couple of games that I purchased, this week and last week that I haven't gotten a chance to play yet. So I'm hoping to kind of get through some of those, and Did
you end up getting a Viveport subscription yet? Or are you still holding off on that?
I still haven't. I'll have to wait to see. I'll probably wait until there's a little bit more, because you tried it with the current titles, right?
Yeah, so I haven't played through all of the titles yet, but I mean that's another thing that I'm looking to go through.
I'm thinking, yeah. I mean, I'm definitely going to sign up for it sometime. I'm just trying to decide whether I'm going to do it now or wait a little bit. We'll see. So,
gotcha. Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's go ahead and end the episode here. Just another reminder: we are up on iTunes, Stitcher, and YouTube. YouTube is where we keep the conversation going. So make sure to subscribe. We've been doing a little bit better in terms of posting gameplay videos, and so we're going to try and at least post one a day if we can.
No, that was accurate. You've been doing a better job. I still need to figure out. Like for those who don't know, like I was having issues recording previously.
I mean, now with your new graphics card, you might be able to.
Exactly. Like pretty much everything's been changed since that. Like I should definitely try to do it again. So.
Yeah, you should give. Well, I mean, you already played through Batman, but whatever game you do next, just try doing like a walkthrough of it. I think it'd be fun.
Yeah. No, that'd be fun.
But yes, so we're on YouTube. Make sure you check us out there. On iTunes, we are doing this Steam card giveaway or Steam gift card giveaway right now. Our next episode is going to be in May. So every month we're doing the giveaway, just in case you missed the announcement at the beginning of the episode. But you can go ahead and enter in for the giveaway by just leaving us a review there. Let us know how we're doing, and then take a screenshot of that and send it to contact@everythingvive.com. And the instructions are going to be in the show notes, so make sure you check that out. But this will be an ongoing thing, so even if you don't win next week, you're still entered in for the following months. And we'll just be going through, and it's our chance to give back and hopefully grow the podcast in the iTunes. Oh my God, I cannot speak anymore. Hopefully grow the podcast in the iTunes store. And go from there. But Ronnie, man, have a great rest of your week, and we'll be back again with you guys very, very soon. Take care.